Success begins long before results appear. It begins with awareness, the kind that forces you to pause, reflect, and ask yourself the questions most people avoid. Who am I really? What do I believe in when no one is watching? What drives me when the applause fades and the recognition disappears? Thinking for yourself isn't just a skill, it's a discipline. It's choosing to stand firm in a world that constantly tries to shape you into something else. It's the courage to say, I will define success on my own terms, even when everyone else is following a script. From a young age, we are taught what to think, not how to think. We're handed answers before we learn how to ask better questions. The result is a generation full of people who can repeat information, but struggle to form conviction. Independent thinking is the antidote to that. It's about taking information from the world, filtering it through your own values, and emerging with clarity. It's refusing to be swayed by trends, opinions, or fear of judgment. It's realizing that the loudest voices aren't always the wisest ones. When you learn to think for yourself, you begin to see beyond the surface of things. You notice patterns in human behavior, motives behind decisions, and truths that others overlook. You stop chasing every new idea and instead begin to evaluate what truly aligns with your purpose. The ability to pause, analyze, and decide with intent becomes your greatest advantage. You're no longer reacting to life, you're responding with awareness. You take ownership of your choices rather than becoming a product of your environment. Independent thinkers are not rebels without cause. They are creators with vision. They don't reject everything that exists, they question whether it serves progress. They understand that conformity breeds comfort, but originality breeds innovation. Every great invention, every movement that changed the world started with someone who dared to think differently. These people weren't fearless. They were thoughtful. They saw what everyone saw, but thought what no one thought. There's a quiet strength in thinking for yourself. It gives you an inner confidence that no title or approval can provide. You become comfortable with uncertainty because your decisions are rooted in principles, not popularity. You develop a deeper sense of identity, one that doesn't shift based on trends or opinions. This sense of self-awareness becomes your compass in a chaotic world, guiding you through confusion and distraction. But self-awareness isn't just about knowing what you want. It's also about knowing what you don't want. It's about drawing boundaries around your energy, your values, and your time. Thinking for yourself helps you say no without guilt, because you understand that every no to distraction is a yes to purpose. You stop comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. You measure progress not by external validation, but by internal alignment. Many people mistake independence of thought for arrogance, but in truth, it's humility. It's the willingness to admit you don't know everything, and the openness to keep learning. Thinking for yourself means gathering perspectives from others, listening deeply, and then deciding what resonates with your truth. It's the balance between being teachable and being decisive, between curiosity and conviction. In times of crisis, this skill becomes even more essential. When everything around you feels uncertain, the person who can think clearly and calmly will always lead. While others panic, you pause. While others follow, you evaluate. The ability to make grounded decisions in moments of pressure doesn't come from experience alone. It comes from clarity of thought built over time. This kind of clarity requires solitude. In a world addicted to constant connection, it's easy to forget the value of silence. But solitude isn't isolation, it's recalibration. It's the moment when your mind declutters and your values rise to the surface. The greatest thinkers, creators, and leaders in history all shared this habit. They made time to think, not to react, not to produce, but to think deeply, intentionally, and independently. And as you strengthen this skill, you begin to notice something profound. The world stops feeling like a competition and starts feeling like a conversation. You stop needing to prove your worth and start expressing your truth. You move through life with quiet confidence, grounded purpose, and an unshakable belief that the answers you seek aren't out there. They've been within you all along. Empathy is the ability to step outside of your own experience and step into someone else's. It is not simply about feeling sorry for people or offering them comfort. It is about truly seeing them, understanding the world through their perspective, and recognizing their emotions as valid and real. In a world that often rewards speed, efficiency, and performance, empathy can seem like a luxury. Yet it is one of the most vital skills we can ever develop. It bridges the gap between people, allowing understanding to grow where judgment once lived. When we practice empathy, we stop trying to fix others and start trying to understand them. The power of empathy lies in its quietness. It does not demand attention or recognition. It exists in small moments. The pause before you respond, the silence that allows someone else to speak, the simple act of listening without needing to be right. True empathy is not performative. It doesn't seek applause or praise. It happens when no one is watching. In the way you respond to a coworker's frustration, in the patience you show towards someone who's struggling, in the grace you give yourself when you fall short. It's not an event, but a mindset that you carry into every interaction. Our world has become louder, faster, and more opinionated than ever. People are quick to react but slow to understand. We scroll past pain and disagreement, numbing ourselves with distraction. Empathy cuts through that noise. It requires us to slow down, to notice the subtle expressions and unspoken words that reveal someone's truth. It asks us to care when it's inconvenient, to listen when we'd rather defend, and to connect when we'd rather retreat. It reminds us that being right is less important than being kind. Empathy also changes how we lead. A leader without empathy may have authority, but they will never have influence. People don't follow titles, they follow trust, and trust is built through understanding. When a leader listens deeply, when they make others feel heard and valued, they create a culture of loyalty and safety. In workplaces where empathy thrives, creativity rises, collaboration strengthens, and conflict becomes a path to growth rather than division. Teams led with empathy don't just work harder, they work with heart. But empathy is not weakness. It doesn't mean tolerating everything or avoiding tough conversations. In fact, empathy gives you the courage to confront what's difficult because you understand the human side of every challenge. When you lead with empathy, you can disagree without disrespect, and you can make hard decisions with compassion. It allows you to hold people accountable while still honoring their dignity. It's not about choosing between strength and kindness. It's about realizing that the strongest people are often the kindest. Developing empathy requires curiosity. You can't understand someone's story if you never take the time to ask. Curiosity breaks down walls. It transforms assumptions into awareness and indifference into connection. Asking simple questions like, "How are you feeling?" or "What's been challenging for you?" can open doors to deeper understanding. The more you learn about others, the more you realize how interconnected we all are. Beneath different experiences and perspectives, we share the same desires: to be seen, respected, and valued. Empathy begins within. You cannot offer genuine understanding to others if you have not practiced it toward yourself. Many people are quick to show compassion to others yet harshly judge their own mistakes. Learning self-empathy means acknowledging your emotions without shame and accepting your imperfections without apology. It's giving yourself permission to be human. When you do this, you become more patient, more forgiving, and more capable of offering that same grace to others. There are moments in life when empathy feels hard, when people disappoint us, when anger replaces compassion, or when we are too tired to care. But it's in those moments that empathy matters most. It reminds us that everyone carries invisible battles. The rude stranger, the distant friend, the impatient colleague, each is fighting something we cannot see. When you choose empathy in those moments, you choose humanity over ego. You choose to break the cycle of reaction and replace it with understanding. Empathy transforms relationships in profound ways. It turns communication into connection and conflict into collaboration. It softens judgment and strengthens unity. When people feel heard, they open up. When they feel understood, they begin to heal. Every meaningful relationship, whether personal or professional, thrives on empathy. It is the invisible thread that ties people together, even across vast differences. Without it, conversations become transactions. With it, they become bridges. The beauty of empathy is that it multiplies. The more you give it, the more it grows in others and within yourself. It teaches you that compassion is not a limited resource, but an infinite exchange. Every act of understanding, every moment of listening, every time you choose patience over reaction adds a small piece of humanity to the world. And though empathy cannot solve every problem, it can change the way we approach them, not from a place of fear or anger, but from a place of connection and hope. Adaptability is no longer an optional trait, It is the lifeline of progress in a world that never stops shifting. Every generation faces change, but the pace of transformation today is unlike anything before. Technology evolves faster than education, industries transform overnight, and the expectations of society seem to rewrite themselves every year. Those who cling to what once worked often find themselves falling behind, not because they lack talent, but because they resist movement. Adaptability is the quiet strength that allows you to stay grounded while the world reshapes itself around you. The truth about adaptability is that it begins in the mind, not in the environment. Many people wait for change to feel comfortable before they act, but comfort never arrives. Change, by its very nature, demands discomfort. To be adaptable is to build peace with uncertainty, to understand that discomfort is not a sign of danger, but a signal of growth. The people who thrive are not those who predict the future, but those who prepare their minds to pivot when it arrives. They don't fear the unknown. They train themselves to learn quickly within it. Adaptability requires humility. It asks you to let go of the illusion that you already know enough. The moment you start believing you've mastered everything is the moment you start falling behind. The adaptable person lives with a student's mindset, open, curious, and eager to learn. They see every experience, whether success or failure, as a lesson. They understand that yesterday's knowledge is valuable, but it cannot always solve tomorrow's problems. This humility keeps them flexible, always ready to adjust, evolve, and reinvent themselves. There's a difference between stability and stagnation, and adaptability helps you recognize it. Stability gives you roots, but stagnation ties you down. Many people stay where they are, not because they are happy, but because they fear starting over. Yet every reinvention begins with a willingness to release what no longer fits. Adaptability means loosening your grip on what once defined you, a job title, a routine, an identity, and stepping into something new, even if you don't yet understand it fully. Growth begins the moment you stop clinging to the past. Adaptability is not chaos. It doesn't mean changing for the sake of change or abandoning consistency. True adaptability is about alignment, staying anchored to your values while adjusting your methods. It's the art of holding your purpose steady while being flexible with your plans. The wind may shift, the landscape may alter, but the direction of your integrity stays true. This balance between stability of purpose and flexibility of approach is what allows adaptable people to move forward without losing themselves. When life throws unexpected challenges your way, adaptability becomes your greatest weapon. The world does not promise predictability. It promises unpredictability wrapped in opportunity. The people who panic in uncertainty are often those who expected life to follow a script. The adaptable person, however, learns to improvise. They look at obstacles and ask, what can I build from this? They turn detours into discoveries and setbacks into setups. They understand that control is not about dictating every outcome, but about managing your response to whatever outcome arrives. In organizations, adaptability separates those that fade from those that flourish. Companies that once dominated markets collapsed because they refused to evolve. The ones that survived were those that embraced change early, experimented boldly, and learned faster than their competitors. Adaptability in leadership is about cultivating an environment where change feels safe, where people are encouraged to innovate, question, and explore new possibilities. The most resilient teams are those that see change not as a threat, but as a teacher. Adaptability also lies deeply within emotional intelligence. It's not only about reacting to external shifts, but also managing internal responses. When uncertainty arrives, your first instinct may be fear or resistance. But adaptability teaches you to pause, to observe those emotions without being ruled by them. It allows you to replace anxiety with awareness and frustration with flexibility. Emotional adaptability turns chaos into clarity. It keeps you from making decisions based on panic and guides you toward choices rooted in perspective. The beauty of adaptability is that it unlocks creativity. When you are open to change, you stop seeing limitations and start seeing options. You become more experimental, more resourceful, and more innovative. You stop asking, can this be done? And start asking, how can we make it work? This shift in thinking turns impossible situations into opportunities for invention. Adaptable people don't wait for perfect conditions. They create progress within imperfect ones. Over time, adaptability transforms into confidence, not the confidence that comes from control, but the kind that comes from trust. You begin to trust yourself, your ability to navigate the unknown, and your capacity to grow through it. You stop fearing the next change because you know you've handled every previous one. Adaptability builds resilience one choice at a time. It reminds you that life is not about avoiding storms, but learning how to move with the wind, to bend without breaking, and to rise stronger after every shift. Communication is one of the most powerful forces in the human experience. It shapes the way we connect, influence, and understand each other. Every idea, every movement, every relationship rises or falls on the strength of communication. It's more than the words we say, it's the tone we use, the energy we bring, and the intention behind every message we send. People often believe communication is about speaking clearly, but it's just as much about listening deeply. The best communicators don't just deliver messages, they create understanding. In a world that moves fast, communication often gets reduced to speed and convenience. Texts replace conversations, emojis replace emotions, and people talk more but understand less. True communication demands presence. It asks you to slow down and engage fully with the person in front of you. It's about putting away distractions, reading between the lines, and hearing what isn't being said. When you give someone your full attention, you communicate something far greater than words. You tell them that they matter. The ability to articulate thoughts clearly is a skill that defines leaders. Words have the power to inspire, to unite, to heal, and to ignite change. History remembers those who could express ideas that moved hearts and shifted minds. Great communication transforms abstract visions into shared realities. It bridges the gap between intention and action, between possibility and achievement. Every team, every organization, every relationship relies on it to thrive. Without it, even the best ideas fade into confusion and silence. But clarity in communication doesn't come from trying to sound impressive. It comes from authenticity. People can sense the difference between words crafted to impress and words spoken from conviction. When you speak with sincerity, your message carries weight. Authentic communication doesn't rely on perfect phrasing or elaborate language. It relies on truth. It's about speaking from a place of honesty and vulnerability, even when it feels uncomfortable. The most powerful voices are those that are real, not rehearsed. Listening is the most underrated form of communication. Many people listen to reply, not to understand. They hear words but miss meaning. Real listening is an act of empathy. It's the willingness to enter another person's world without judgment. When you listen this way, people feel safe to express themselves openly. They feel seen, heard, and valued. And when people feel understood, they become more open to understanding others. Listening builds the kind of trust that no amount of persuasion can achieve. Good communication also requires emotional awareness. It's not just what you say that matters, but how it lands. The same words can heal or harm depending on the timing, tone, and intention behind them. Emotional intelligence allows you to navigate conversations with sensitivity and awareness. It helps you recognize when to speak, when to pause, and when to remain silent. It allows you to handle conflict without aggression and disagreement, without disrespect. Communication grounded in emotional intelligence creates connection rather than division. One of the greatest challenges in communication is learning to express difficult truths. It's easy to speak when everything is agreeable, but real strength appears when you must convey honesty that others might not want to hear. Avoiding hard conversations leads to resentment and misunderstanding, while addressing them with care leads to growth. The goal is not to win an argument, but to create alignment. You can tell the truth and still be kind. You can disagree and still show respect. Courageous communication is what builds integrity within relationships and organizations. Nonverbal communication often speaks louder than words. The way you stand, the look in your eyes, your gestures, and even your silence carry meaning. A leader who says, "I care," but never looks up from their phone sends a message that contradicts their words. People read authenticity through actions. Consistency between what you say and what you do strengthens credibility. Every interaction, whether verbal or silent, tells a story about who you are and what you value. In a collaborative world, communication becomes the glue that holds teams and relationships together. It transforms individual effort into collective achievement. When people communicate openly, assumptions fade and alignment grows. Transparency builds trust, and trust fuels performance. The more people understand each other's intentions and goals, the easier it becomes to move in the same direction. Teams that communicate well don't just work efficiently, They work with unity and shared purpose. The evolution of communication is endless. New tools and technologies will continue to emerge, but the essence will never change connection. The skill lies not in how many platforms you use, but in how deeply you connect across them. Whether through a conversation, a speech, or a written word, communication remains the foundation of every relationship and every vision. The ability to communicate with clarity, empathy, and authenticity will always be the difference between being heard and being understood, between making noise and making impact. Courage is often misunderstood as fearlessness, but true courage has nothing to do with the absence of fear. It is about acting despite fear, moving forward when every instinct tells you to turn back. Every meaningful change in life requires courage because progress always demands risk. The path to growth is uncomfortable. It asks you to leave behind the safety of what you know for the uncertainty of what could be. Courage is not about being reckless. It's about being willing to face what scares you because something inside whispers that it's worth it. Every person encounters moments where courage is tested. These are not grand, cinematic moments. They often come quietly, disguised as everyday choices. The decision to speak your truth when it's easier to stay silent, the choice to start something new when you might fail, the willingness to let go when it hurts. These are acts of courage. It's not the roar of confidence, but the steady heartbeat that says, "I'll try anyway." True courage doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself in action. Courage begins where comfort ends. The mind craves familiarity because it feels safe, but staying in comfort too long leads to stagnation. Every dream that has ever changed a life required someone to step into discomfort. Growth is impossible without the willingness to face the unknown. Courage is what allows you to move forward without guarantees, to keep walking even when the path is unclear. It's the understanding that fear and opportunity often share the same door, and only those brave enough to open it will ever see what's inside. People often wait for the right time, to be brave, the perfect moment when the risks are low and the odds are high. But that moment never comes. Waiting for courage to appear before acting is like waiting for the ocean to calm before learning to swim. Courage is built in motion. It grows when you take the first uncertain step, when you act while your voice trembles and your hands shake. The more you face fear, the less control it has over you. Each act of bravery expands your capacity for the next one. Courage also means accepting failure as a part of the process. Many people never take risks because they are terrified of making mistakes. But failure is not the opposite of success. It's a step toward it. Every setback teaches you something about resilience, strategy, and strength. The most courageous people are not those who have never fallen, but those who have learned to rise after every fall. They understand that failure doesn't define them. Quitting does. Courage is the willingness to fail forward, to use every stumble as a lesson for the next climb. At its core, courage is deeply personal. It's not about proving something to the world, but staying true to yourself when it's difficult. It's standing by your values when others question them. It's choosing integrity over approval. In a world that often rewards conformity, courage becomes an act of rebellion, the quiet kind that doesn't shout but simply refuses to bend. It's the strength to live authentically, even when it costs you comfort, popularity, or acceptance. Courage and vulnerability are inseparable. To be courageous, you must be willing to be seen, to risk rejection, to expose parts of yourself that aren't perfect. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's the birthplace of courage. The strongest people are often those who have dared to be open, who have shown up even when uncertain. It takes immense bravery to say, "This is who I am," in a world that constantly tells you to be someone else. Vulnerability invites connection, and connection gives courage meaning. Courage also demands patience. It's not a single act, but a constant choice. There are days when courage means taking bold action, and there are days when it simply means enduring. Sometimes it's found in persistence, showing up again and again when progress feels invisible. The most powerful courage is not loud or dramatic. It's the quiet endurance of the person who refuses to give up, even when the world stops believing. It's the resilience to keep walking when the path disappears beneath your feet. In leadership, courage is contagious. When one person dares to act with conviction, it gives others permission to do the same. Teams and communities thrive when they are led by people who face fear with transparency and resolve. A courageous leader admits uncertainty, but chooses action anyway. They inspire trust not by having all the answers, but by standing firm in the pursuit of what is right. Courage creates a ripple effect. One brave act can spark countless others. Courage transforms ordinary lives into extraordinary stories. It's what turns hesitation into momentum and dreams into reality. Every invention, every breakthrough, every act of change began with someone daring to take a step that others were too afraid to take. Courage is not about being unafraid. It's about believing that something greater exists beyond the fear. It's the fire that keeps you moving when everything else tries to hold you still. The force that reminds you that progress always begins with a single, brave choice. The future belongs to those who are willing to lead with courage and compassion. It's no longer enough to simply be skilled or intelligent. The world demands something deeper. A human quality that combines strength with empathy, conviction with understanding. The challenges ahead are not just technical or logical, they are emotional, ethical, and deeply human. The people who will shape the next era are those who understand that leadership is not about control, but about connection. They are the ones who can stand strong in uncertainty while still caring for the people who walk beside them. As the world becomes more complex, the divide between people who act with compassion and those who act out of fear grows wider. Fear isolates, compassion unites. The ability to look beyond yourself and see the needs of others is no small feat. It takes patience, humility, and awareness. Compassion doesn't mean softness, it means strength with understanding. It's the courage to care when it's easier to look away. The most influential people in the future will be those who can balance ambition with empathy, who can build progress without losing humanity. Courage and compassion are not opposites, they are partners. Courage without compassion can turn into arrogance, while compassion without courage can fade into passivity. Together, they form the essence of true leadership. Courage gives you the will to act, and compassion gives you the wisdom to act rightly. One drives movement, the other gives it meaning. The world needs people who can lead with both, who can make hard decisions with a soft heart, who can pursue progress while protecting dignity. In an age of noise, outrage, and division, courage and compassion become revolutionary. It takes courage to stay kind when conversations turn cruel. It takes compassion to listen when everyone else is shouting. These are not easy traits to maintain. They require discipline and choice. To be courageous and compassionate means standing for truth without tearing others down. It means seeing humanity even in those you disagree with. It means being firm in principle, but gentle in delivery. This is the kind of leadership the world is starving for. Leadership that heals instead of harms. The future will test our humanity as much as our intelligence. Artificial intelligence, automation, and rapid change will reshape industries and identities alike. But no matter how advanced technology becomes, it cannot replace the warmth of empathy or the strength of moral courage. Machines can analyze data, but they cannot make ethical choices. Algorithms can predict behavior, but they cannot understand pain. The future will favor those who know how to lead humans, not just systems. Compassion will become the rarest and most valuable currency of all. People with courage and compassion create cultures where others can thrive. They make it safe for people to take risks, to innovate, and to grow. In workplaces and communities led by such people, trust replaces fear, collaboration replaces competition, and meaning replaces monotony. These environments don't just produce results, they produce fulfillment. People don't follow courageous and compassionate leaders because they have to. They follow them because they want to. They feel inspired, valued, and connected to something larger than themselves. The beauty of compassion is that it multiplies. One act of kindness, one moment of understanding can ripple outward far beyond what you can see. It changes the tone of conversations, the energy of teams, and the spirit of communities. Courage amplifies that effect. When you combine empathy with boldness, kindness becomes movement. It stops being a passive feeling and becomes an active force. It challenges injustice, speaks up for what is right, and lifts others in the process. Courage gives compassion its voice. In times of crisis, courage and compassion reveal character. When everything seems to fall apart, some people step forward not because they are unafraid, but because they refuse to let fear define them. They lead with calm, speak with honesty, and act with integrity. Their compassion becomes a stabilizing force that reminds others of their own strength. When people feel seen and supported, they find the courage to keep going. The future will reward those who bring stability through empathy and strength through example. This kind of leadership begins with self-awareness. You cannot lead others with courage and compassion if you have not cultivated them within yourself. It starts with facing your own fears, understanding your own emotions, and treating yourself with the same kindness you hope to offer others. Compassion turned inward becomes resilience. Courage turned inward becomes confidence. When you are grounded in both, you don't need to dominate others to feel powerful. Your power comes from presence, not position. The future will belong to those who understand that success is no longer measured by what you achieve alone, but by what you help others become. It will belong to those who can stand firm in chaos and still extend a hand to lift others. Courage will drive innovation, but compassion will give it purpose. The most enduring legacy will come from people who had the bravery to act and the heart to care, those who chose connection over competition and humanity over haste, and those who understood that real leadership begins not with authority, but with empathy.